In early June 1798, a group of suspected rebels were taken prisoner by Reverend Cope and the Carnew yeomen.
The single point for which the town became notorious was a massacre on the 1st of June 1798, when 41 untried prisoners were killed by Reverend Cope, the Carnew yeomanry, and other people operating out of this castle.
Where were they killed then?
They're believed to have been shot in the precincts of this castle.
Wow. Would the walkers have been involved in that, just as fairly simple yeomen?
Yes, they would have been. We know they were members of the local Carnew Yeoman Infantry Unit, and as such they would have taken part in the rounding up of prisoners, the skirmishing with the rebels in the first days of the rebellion.
Less than 2 weeks later, the rebels retaliated, and Carnew was burnt to the ground. But on the 21st of June, the United Irishmen suffered a major defeat only 30 miles from Carnew, at the Battle of Vinegar Hill. Over the following months, the rebellion was quashed, with the loss of an estimated 30,000 lives. With the help of Carnew yeomen like the Walkers, English rule in Wicklow was secured for another 120 years.
So Thomas was born here in 1773. How Irish would they have felt? Would they have been loyal to the Crown because they still in some way felt English?
No, on the contrary, the typical Irish loyalist would have been a lot more zealous in protecting their position than a typical Englishman. It's a bit like the zeal of the convert, I suppose, you know. Here they are. They're not exactly on a frontier, but they would have considered themselves fully entitled to be here as new Irish.
So they would have felt, if you'd asked them, are you Irish, they'd have said yes.
Absolutely.
So to find out more about Thomas Walker, how could I find out more? How can I go further back?
Well, the obvious starting point is to bear in mind what we know, that he's a tenant of a number of generations, resident on the Fitzwilliam estate here in South Wicklow. In all likelihood, his family were transferred from another Fitzwilliam estate in the north of England. The best place to go for that is to the Fitzwilliam papers in Sheffield.
Wow, I never expected that. What odd is, when so you're looking at family tree, the rebellion, 1798, and then you discover that, your ancestors were on the side that history and time has decided was the wrong side. It means that you've got to stop and you've got to examine that history in a slightly more detailed or complicated way than you would, if they were just part of the United Irishmen, hurrah. But you have to stop and imagine what their lives were like, why they made the choices they did. I can't believe they were bad people. That's just, that's not an option for me. I suppose you can't. There must be people who have to look back at their ancestors and kind of think, well, I guess they were evil. Hopefully, we've lost the evil gene. I can't believe that Thomas Walker was an evil person. As far as he knew, he was on God's side. Hopefully, he was just a decent man caught in a difficult situation who believed he was doing the right thing. Now, I'm really looking forward to this next bit, because it's an absolute leap into the dark, because I always assumed that somewhere in the mists of time we were from Scotland, because it's Walkers and Grahams, but it seems no, we're heading back to Sheffield. So I never expected that, and I don't know what we're going to find.
Having traced his Irish heritage through 5 generations, Graham's back in England.
Well, I never thought I'd be excited about going to Sheffield, but that's where we're going, because the Wentworth Fitzwilliam papers are there, and hopefully I'll find out, finally, where the Walker family that ended up in Carnew came from.
The Sheffield archives hold early records of the Fitzwilliam Wentworth estate, including the details of their Irish tenants. Historian Melvyn Jones shows Graham rental books for Carnew in the early 18th century, the years before Thomas Walker was born.
So here we are again, Carnew.
Now, what date is this from?
1730.
It's incredible to me. It's so vivid.
I know. And it's so legible.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Oh, John Walker.
His wife and 2 sons.
And that's the only Walker?
That's the only Walker.
Well, then,
that's the only Walker on the Shillelagh estate.
So there's a John Walker living in Carnew 40 years before Thomas Walker was born.
So the 2 sons, one of them would have been Thomas's father. Is that how that would work?
That's what it appears.
If he was born in 73.
Yeah.
The earliest Walker recorded in Carnew is John Walker, who was almost certainly Thomas's grandfather. Could he be the first Walker to arrive in Ireland?
If we look at a completely different source altogether, these are the hearth tax returns for South Yorkshire for 1672. That's when they were taxing people on how many chimneys they had.
I just love that this book exists. Somebody published it.
And if we look in the village of Greesborough,
there's a Thomas
Walker. And there's actually a William Walker as well. There are 2 Walkers.
All right, so we have the Walkers in Greesbrook. We have John in Carnew. Is there any way, apart from just guesswork, of linking those 2?
Yes, there is, because if we can go back to the Thomas or the William in here and see whether we can find any births.
Oh, so John might have been born here.
It might have been. (1691).
That is amazing.
Now, let's have a look.
It's John, son of Thomas.
10th day
Of?
May 1691.
So, hang on, does that make sense?
Well, how old would he have been in 1714? How old would he have been in 1728?
Not Carol Vortimer? I don't know. 1691. No, he'd been fine. Yeah, he would have been...
He'd have been early 20s in
20s,
1714, 37, 38, with a wife and 2 children, 1728. That sounds about right, doesn't it?
So John Walker...
Thomas was his father, and he's John. And we've got John in 1730.
In Carnew.
In Carnew. So we've got that continuity from 1672 over the water.
He was the first to go.
And Greesborough is with less than a mile from the Wentworth Woodhouse Park Lodge. So he's likely to have been a tenant.
Graham can now confirm that it was John Walker, son of Thomas from Greesborough, who left Yorkshire around 1713 to settle the Walker family in Carnew.
The owner of the estate went over to Ireland in 1713 because rents were due to be reset. And he was very keen on planting a Protestant population there.
Yes.
And of course all his tenants in South Yorkshire were Protestants. And there were all sorts of work, for tailors, for masons, for shoemakers, for smiths. And you can imagine, Thomas Walker saying to his son John, there's an opportunity over there, lad.
Wow.
I never had you down as a Yorkshireman.
And nor did I.
So you've got the same genes as Michael Parkins.
You probably won't be too thrilled about that either. Wow, this is amazing.
Melvin's brought Graham to the Wentworth estate, where John Walker was born 22 years before his journey to Carnew to establish the Walker Protestant line in Ireland.
So when Thomas Walker was paying his rent, he was going to that?
That's it.
I do like that idea of John Walker, you know, upping sticks here, going off by himself, embarking on that journey and adventure, and from that one man, all of our history in Ireland began. One of the things I was interested in finding out was just how Irish the family is, because growing up we never felt particularly Irish. And I certainly feel more connected to the sense of family, and it's altered my perception of family in terms of looking for roots and looking for a sense of where I belong. I haven't really found that, but there is a sort of sense of belonging just in that through bloodline. The fact that that family line goes back so far, it seems that blood is more important than place, and blood is more important than land. And this has just sort of made it very real, that idea of how important family is. It's a weirdly comforting feeling, knowing that you're attached to something that's rooted that deep in history.